who wouldn't want to be involved in history as it happens, really? And I think for me, on that day, when the announcement was made that indeed the remains were those of Richard III, I was taken early in the morning by Terry King to see the remains of Richard III. And I stood there and I thought, I'm standing next to Richard III. For somebody who's interested in history, how much of a unique opportunity is that? This man lived and was a king of England. And then I thought, but I'm also directly linked genetically to him. There's a part of him, a tangible physical part of him that's part of me. And that really brought me to a halt, I suppose. Up until that moment, I found it very interesting and fascinating, but it was a moment of emotion, I suppose, in a way. My name is Michael Ibsen. I am a 17th generation nephew of Richard III, and I also happen to be a cabinet maker, and I also happen to be making the coffin for Richard III.
There is a DNA match between the maternal DNA from the descendants of the family of Richard III and the skeletal remains that we found at the Greyfriars Dig.
My mother was really at the beginning of all of this, because back in 2004, John Ashdown Hill, the English historian, needed to trace an all-female line of descent in order to find a mitochondrial match, not for Richard at the time, but for bones that they thought were those of Margaret of York, one of his sisters. And he undertook this lengthy genealogical search, and at the end of this all-female line, he found my mother. And so he rang her up out of the blue, really, and my mother answered the phone, and she was informed that she was a descendant of Anne of York, Richard III's sister, which I think was rather startling, to say the least, for her. Fairly early on, somebody came up with the idea, somebody mentioned to me the idea that it wouldn't be interesting if I made the coffin for Richard III. And I thought, well, that'd certainly be an interesting idea, and I'd certainly be more than happy to be involved. I'm very interested in not producing some sort of woodworking masterpiece for the coffin, because I don't think it's about me. I think it should be about Richard and things that are symbolic. English oak, sourced in this case from the Duchy of Cornwall, which I thought was highly appropriate, and using yew as well. And I thought those are the sorts of things that people can relate to, rather than looking at some cabinet-making bit of genius. The design is basically very straightforward. It's a lot of straight lines, small angles. I like to think that it's elegant. I budgeted 2 to 3 weeks because I wanted to get it right, and I always like to have time because things sometimes change slightly as you make something. Also, the lid of the coffin will have some carving on it, and I myself do not do carving, so I've enlisted the help of Anna Louise Parker, a very talented carver who just happens to have a workshop 3 blocks from my workshop.
Ta-da!
Go for it. But the only difference really between the Tudor and the Lancastrian and the Yorkist is the colour.
Yeah.
But it's all about symbolism, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah, well, it is important, isn't it? Just that colour difference.
That's it.
Yeah?
I think for me it's very special. It feels almost as if it's a familial completion of my involvement in the whole story. It seems to me just a wonderful way to be in at the end of the whole project, as it were, and to see him lowered into the vault, and to know that he's under that stone in a coffin that I made.